I think there's some innate drive in humans to combine two different tools into one multi-tool. The Romans combined the fork and spoon into this. The Victorians had the elegant but lethal cane with a sword. In the 70s we got the 3-in-1 clock radio phone, and these days the modern man has the 5-in-1 pure carbon total clean carbon shower. Unfortunately, combination products often fall into a common trap. You can end up with something that is less than the sum of its parts, just a crappy version of each of its components. In the 60s, some employees of Ricoh noticed they were already making both binoculars and cameras. And they couldn't resist the urge to play God and bred two of their products to create this new creature, the Ricoh Teleca 240. But is this just a bad camera and bad binoculars? Or did they actually make something useful? Let's find out. First, I should be clear that they did not make something entirely new. As early as 1889, a binocular camera was made by Ross in London. With that one, you had to swap out the eyepieces with a film back and a viewfinder, and you actually used it backwards when taking photos. In the 1950s, the Toco Photo Company introduced the Cyclops. This was a pair of binoculars with a sub-miniature camera in the middle, with its own lens separate from the binoculars themselves. A while later, Ricoh made the Teleca 240 as an evolution of the Cyclops concept. The biggest difference being that the camera now uses one of the binocular barrels as a lens. When I saw the Teleca 240, my first thought was really, why not? Like, why is this not a more common design? Binoculars are a tried and tested way to look at things far away, and in my mind, your eyes are basically camera sensors. So I was wondering why every telephoto camera doesn't look like this. And it turns out there are several good reasons for that. But at the core of all of them is the difference between how our eyes work and how our cameras work. Before we get into that, we have to appreciate the engineering that went into this product. Because despite its failings, it's neither cheap nor poorly made. I can't claim to have tried many binoculars, but these look really good. They're bright, sharp, and with decent magnification. Though at 1.8 kilos, they are a bit heavy to use for long periods. This box on the side is the camera body, which takes a roll of 35mm film. The right barrel of the binoculars act as the camera lens, with a beam splitter around here that reflects some of the light into the camera and lets the rest of it through to your eyepiece. Importantly, that means that not all of the light going through the lens is actually reaching the film. When held normally, the camera takes vertical photos. This means the photos only take up half the space of a normal 35mm frame. But this is still more resolution than the earlier sub-miniature binocular cameras like the Cyclops. The right barrel has a retractable lens hood and aperture adjustment at the front. And here we can find one of the biggest limitations of this camera. You can see both f-stops and t-stops are marked. Now, t-stops are rarely used in still photography, so I'm going to quickly explain what they are. The f-stop of a lens is the focal length divided by the physical diameter of the aperture. But it turns out that this alone does not tell you exactly how much light reaches the film or sensor. Because as the light travels through the length of the lens, some light may be reflected back out or be absorbed. For most lenses and cameras, this is pretty negligible. However, if the losses are significant enough, you can use the t-stop as a corrected version of the f-stop, and on this camera, the beam splitter causes significant loss of light. While the physical size indicates that this is an f3.5 lens, the adjusted t-stop means that you have to meter with f9 instead. Combine this with the long focal length, which requires fast shutter speeds, and you severely limit what kind of light you can shoot this camera in. The camera body itself has a lot of similarities to the Ricoh Auto Half, which is from the same era. though it's definitely been adapted a bit to fit this design. The available shutter speeds are a 60th, 1/25th, and 2/50th of a second. Without any extra stability, I'm only really comfortable shooting at 1/250th, although 1/25th can also work if you have steady hands or are willing to take some risk. The focal length is 165mm, which is equivalent to about 240 in full frame. To help with stability, the camera actually comes with a shoulder brace. Unfortunately, mine is missing a piece, so I wasn't able to try it properly, but I can imagine it being very helpful. There is also a tripod mount, but somehow it feels strange to mount this thing on a tripod. I had a bit of trouble focusing in the beginning. As with all proper binoculars, there are diopter adjustments at the eyepiece to adjust for differences between the vision of your two eyes. But on these you can adjust the diopter on both eyes, including the one used as the viewfinder for the camera. I don't have the instruction manual to see how this was supposed to be done, but my first thought was to set the right diopter ring to 0 to see the same thing the camera would see. This turned out to be wrong and several shots came back out of focus. The next time I set the middle focus wheel to infinity and then adjusted the diopters until things far away were in focus. That worked a bit better, though I'm still not 100% sure that that is the right procedure. Some of the color photos I took came back with a red cast on parts of the image. I'm assuming this is a light leak from the back of the film compartment, because exposing the back of color negative film does give red images. I think the image quality is totally okay. With half frame you lose some resolution, so the grain becomes quite visible. But with enough light you can get reasonably sharp results. My hit rate was not great, but I think a lot of it stemmed from too little light, as I didn't have the patience to wait for sunny days, as well as the focusing issues I mentioned. If you actually got f3.5 worth of light, that would massively improve the usability of this camera. That is almost 3 full stops more than the light you actually get. And for a camera you might want to shoot wildlife with, making those fast shutter speeds attainable is quite important. I wonder if they considered making this an SLR with a moving mirror instead of the beam splitter. That would definitely improve the light situation, though I'm guessing there just isn't enough space for a mechanism like that. So let's ask a bigger question. If binoculars are the standard tool to watch wildlife, why isn't this camera the standard way to photograph it? Well, our eyes and the image processing in our brain is just better than the technology, at least back when this was made. First, our vision is great at adjusting to low light. At least at handheld shutter speeds, film just cannot compete with the sensitivity of our eyes. Second, our eyes are also great at compensating for movement. Even if we are a bit unstable and the binoculars are shaky, we can perceive the scene we're looking at quite well. Film cameras are just not dynamic like that. Once the shutter is open, any movement will make the image less sharp. So at least in the context of analog still photography, our eyes reign supreme. So to compensate, good telephoto cameras need big lenses that can let in a lot of light. You also need to be able to stabilize it as much as possible, which is easier with a long lens than it is with binoculars. So while it's a fun novelty to be able to take photos with your binoculars, I'll conclude with a quote from the great Ron Swanson, in case any product designers are watching. Never half-ass 2 things, whole-ass 1 thing. Hi, future Joachim here. I just realized when editing this video that I forgot to mention a pretty big problem with these binoculars. And that is that when you hold the binoculars level, the camera is not level. So if you take a photo like this, the horizon is going to be on an angle, which you can clearly see in this image here. This line should be pretty much level, but it absolutely isn't. And so to correct for that, you kind of have to hold them like this when taking a photo, which is just super annoying.